Welcome back to our series of interviews with home educated adults in Ireland. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Nadia Rice. So Nadia, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, what age you are, and yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Monica. So I'm 25, turning 26 next month, and I'm the eldest of 5 home-educated children raised in County Laois by my folks. So I was never in formal education until the age of 17 when I went to College.
Okay. So, so just to make it really obvious to people, you didn't go to creches, you didn't go to play school, you didn't do primary school, you didn't do a junior cert, you didn't do any stay in secondary school, you didn't do your junior certificate exam at 15 as Irish teens would, and you didn't do the leaving certificate exam, which most people use to get to college. But you got to college. So
I did get to college. Okay. So I was always very interested in art, and I actually did a little pre-interview with my mum over the week and asked if my kind of myth and legend of why I was home educated lines up with what actually happened. So she said I was accurate in saying that when I was about 3 or 4, I really didn't like mornings and wasn't too pushed on going into school right away. So she was very lucky to have a lot of friends in the Laois League, which I know you're part of as well, who had kind of older children who had been home educated, and even when it was going to flexi, so it wasn't the most foreign idea in the world to her.
So just for people who may not know, the Laois League is a breastfeeding support organisation, and it kind of there would, I suppose, be a cohort of people who start with breastfeeding and then go on to the notion of attachment parenting, and then that might feed into finding a group of like-minded families who home educate.
Yes, absolutely. And that was the case for us, which was wonderful. And we've had a very strong community the whole way up with kind of those ethos in place. And so I was home educated originally for the first 2 years, and then my sister came along and we kept going. But for me, art was always the main focus since as long as I can remember. That was very much what I loved doing and what I was given a huge amount of time to do, which for me was just so wonderful. And there was never any restrictions on how much I could draw in a day or what I could create that way.
Away now, clean up the table, we need to put dinner there. Yeah.
Exactly. So we had a lot of table dinner on our laps and things like this because the table was being used, so that was wonderful.
Do not disturb the artist at work, I'm a firm believer.
Yes. So yeah, throughout that I was home educated alongside all my younger siblings, and I did a lot of kind of extracurricular classes as well, but never formal education. So I did a lot of kind of ballet and gymnastics and things, and so for me, social wasn't a thing that I was worried about or ever felt I needed to improve on. And I had a lot of friends through home education and other areas like the extracurricular. And when I got to 17, I had been looking at courses locally. Before that, I'd done a couple of adult night courses with my grandmother and my uncle, which I think now to think back is pretty surreal that they let a 12, 13-year-old into those. I don't think that's necessarily the way now.
And what were those classes that those people who ran them had the bit of openness to say, okay, maybe a young teen, a child, really at 12, it can cope with an adult setting?
Yes, so one of them was photography, digital photography, which is very interesting and kind of, I think I was the youngest bear there by maybe 30 years, but I really enjoyed it at the time. And also cooking, kind of a vegan cooking thing as well. So I had a bit of an idea in my head of what adult education was like, which didn't necessarily line up with when I went in. So I went to a local college from where we are, the Abbey Leaks Further Education College.
Okay.
Which was just a really wonderful experience. So I just turned 17 that summer, and I was the youngest in my class, but I went in there very nervous of the structure, what it was going to be like, and then found it actually really mirroring my experience of being a home educated child because of the variety of age groups. As it was a further education college, there was a lot of people who had just finished leaving cert, or there was people who were in their 60s and coming back and really interested. Exactly. And we were also in with, so we were level 5 in there, FETAC, and then there was a level 6, but in the same room. So it was very, very immersive and very community spirit driven, I felt. And we had 3 tutors in there, and each of them focused on a different speciality, but all of them kind of taught us together. And I just found it a really, really wonderful year. And my mum would drive me out there every morning. So that was kind of our communal first experience of having the morning run, which we quite enjoyed actually.
Did you now be honest, did you become a morning person after
Actually, since I was about 7 or 8, actually, I'm quite a morning person now. I'll be an early starter, so that changed. Yeah, no, it's a funny one that I kind of quite like getting up in the morning. That wasn't a huge problem when we got to Feedback College, luckily.
So what I take from that is, if your young person, child, is not a morning person, then there is no necessity or fear in a parent's mind where, well, how will you ever do a 9 to 5 if you don't want to get out of bed when you're 4? And we think about people entering the workforce when they're 20 or so.
Absolutely.
So you found your own way of becoming a morning person.
I did, yes. Yeah, it leveled out and now I love them. So yeah, absolutely.
And just for people who may not be aware, FETAC is like a bridging ground in the Irish education system between the Leaving Certificate exam that you take when you're 17 or 18, and most people try to use that for college entry. And FETAC stands for Further Education and Training Awards Council, I think. But basically there's a much, I would say, more collaborative approach between the instructors and the students if you're comparing it to a secondary school situation. And definitely it's like fewer, I would say, rules and coercion and rewards and punishments, more kind of a gently bringing people along, because the idea is that people do that course because they want to be there, not because it's compulsory or mandatory or someone says you have to be in school, which is the experience of an awful lot of your age cohort, I would say, or when you were 17, that would have been the experience. So just tell us, what was the name of the course that you did in Abbey Leaks?
So that was Art, Craft and Design, level 5 was what I was in, yeah.
And that was a 1-year course. And if it's structured like the ones in Carlow, it was a 4-day attendance and then 1-day work experience. Was it similar for you, or were you more full-time?
So what we did there, and I think that this was quite a clever move by the tutors, because we were quite a large class and they had a very good attendance rate throughout the years. It was quite a popular thing in the Midlands, because I don't think there was many like it, especially at the time. I'm not really sure now. But they didn't have external work experience, as there just wasn't enough places to do that, I think, for people. So what they did instead is they brought a tutor in for 2 weeks and they worked with us making book covers. So they were a experience in their own career and then they brought it into us, which is wonderful. But we did have 4 days in there and then a half day on Fridays. First time experience weekends, and I thought that was a lot of fun. I thought it was really interesting. Yeah.
I know most of the FETAC courses that I'm aware of have a work experience component, and for the ones I have more direct experience because of my children doing them, it's a case of you're expected to go 1 day a week and do your work experience, but your college ticked the work experience box by having it very immersive and getting somebody in to make you produce something at the end of that.
Exactly. It was quite unusual, I think, for the thing, and it worked well. During the academic year, though, I did actually go up and I worked on a movie set doing costume, which kind of went towards my work experience as well in that year. So it was a really, really excellent, they did a school trip as well, kind of thing. We went to Florence and went all the galleries and everything. So it was really wonderful. They really made
trip left the country and went to Italy.
Yes, absolutely. So that was a nice bonus too. And I can't speak high enough of the tutors. They all were really, really wonderful and really, really engaged in having a home educator. I don't think they'd had a home educator with no experience from formal education come into them before, and they were very open-minded, and I really felt that they catered to my capability when I first started, which was I was quite anxious about the idea of the routine. I think I found a little bit overwhelming as a concept when I first went in, after coming from having routines in my own way where I'd have classes 4 days a week and things like this, but it felt like the full day was quite intimidating. I remember feeling kind of like, where's all my time gonna go, And I think they were really accommodating, and very quickly I felt very comfortable in the setting, and they really aided that. So it was a really wonderful position.
You wanted to do that badly enough to adjust to the timetable as well, I'm guessing.
Exactly, yes, yeah.
So you finished that FETAC with pretty high results, I would.
Yeah, a lot of distinctions. Yeah, I was happy.
And then you used that course to access university. In what way, or what did you do?
Yeah, so I think when I started the year, if I kind of think back to what I was thinking there, I'd always had the idea of being an artist. That's what I wanted to do, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do to make that happen, or if I wanted to do something more practical and kind of have art lean into it. So during the college year, I had friends in the course who were applying for CIOs, and this has been something I'd kind of been thinking about, but wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go. Um, so we applied for mainly Dun Laoghaire, so costume was what I wanted to do initially, which I thought would be quite like be able to use the artistic but kind of had a practical application, and I wasn't sure how I felt about doing fine art full time. Um, but we applied for a bunch of different places. One of them was Limerick and one of them was Crawford. And I'd actually never heard of Crawford College of Art and Design in Cork before. Um, but I knew I liked Cork in an abstract way. I'd kind of been down there as a teenager for kind of day trips and things like this, but didn't know much about the city. And so when I started going for interviews, I went to Limerick, to Dun Laoghaire, and then to Cork. And then as soon as I came down here for my interview, I just remember being like, oh, okay, I like this. And the college itself is quite small, so it's part of CIT down in Cork, but it's about 300, 400 person campus in the city centre.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
yes, I felt very comfortable right away. So it's a lovely old kind of red brick building, and it felt quite similar to the Abbey Lakes setup in that capacity, where they kind of had a lot of different people milling about. It was quite integrated, I kind of felt, and there didn't seem to be very specific departments necessarily. It felt quite merged, which I enjoyed. So I went down there and I had my interviews for all three, and I did get into all three, which was wonderful and really lovely. Feeling validation in that. So I kind of think the Abbey League.
Then you had to choose which you were going to.
Exactly. So my choice was also aided by the fact that I had two friends. So one of them would be Orla, who's another home educated teenager at the time, and then my friend Anya as well. The three of us knew we wanted to move somewhere together to go to college. So we were kind of looking at both places. And I think when Crawford came through, I got full marks on my portfolio, which just felt like a sign. It was very exciting at the time. So it kind of made the decision for me in a way, I think. And we moved down in the late summer of 2012. We started down here. So we were just 18 then, and it was our first time living out of home. And so we moved down and started the academic year. And it really was just a wonderful experience. And I found the CAO process very aided by being in the Free Tech College at the time. I found the portfolio really set me up for knowing what they were going to be wanting from it. So the tutors helped a lot in kind of compiling it, and they would have a lot of different focus and different mediums there. So at the time, it wasn't that I was necessarily doing fine art drawing. There was a lot of textiles and ceramics and painting, and there's a lot of different areas being explored.
Okay. So you did your 4 years in Crawford and loved it.
Yes.
And you did quite well when it came to your final exams.
Yes, I had a wonderful degree show and a really fantastic year group. I'm really grateful still for the kind of kindness of everyone in there. So yeah, we had a really excellent degree show. Part of the degree show was that, and every year is that the group year funds their own degree show through fundraising and working on that. So I was in the PR group for that, and I found that a really, really interesting side to that as well. Yeah, so you'd be kind of split up early enough in fourth year, and you'd be doing fundraising crew or on the night or PR and things like this. So I was doing kind of social media and the PR, which was connecting people in to be the speakers for the day and to kind of find funding. And it was really, really interesting to kind of see how that all came together. And I found that a really valuable experience. And something I'm really grateful for Crawford was the fact that it was very self-driven, which I think just really worked with being home educated. I found that it really very easily, we'd have 3 days a week of studio, which was just completely, you'd come in, you'd work on your own thing, and you set your own schedule, and you'd have tutorials and kind of things during the day. But it really felt like being home educated in the same way that I found that I was always able to direct myself to whatever I was interested in at the time. It was very self-directed. Yeah.
That's really positive to know that, like, the self-direction and the self-motivation that had been really you'd shown from infancy, and then when you first picked up a pencil, that had been able to continue to your university life, which I guess is one of the stereotypes or myths that people think is that, if you haven't ever had your nose put to the grindstone by somebody else. You will never apply yourself and meet a deadline, or, you know, that kind of thing. So you're at this point, you've got your 4-year degree under your belt and you are 22. So do you want to talk to me what happened about work and things after that when you
Yeah,
graduated?
so when I graduated, I kind of had a focus. I wanted to do illustration and I wanted to draw, and I wasn't sure how much I wanted to be in the gallery necessarily. I'd had a few kind of group shows I'd been part of, and I'd really enjoyed my final degree show. It was just a really, yeah, validating experience, and it felt very positive what I was doing there. But then I wasn't sure how comfortable I was with kind of continuing in the fine art world necessarily on its own. I was more interested in doing something that was a little more engaged or illustrative. So there was a few things up in the air then. So I worked kind of freelance for the 2 years after college. So I did some kind of childminding to pay bills, but then I also did some work in sort of theatres and short films, and a lot of commissions would come in for different things, and they would be mostly through drawing. I really enjoyed that, and there was a lot of people from my year or my kind of social group in college who were doing their own creative endeavors and would come on to me to collaborate for certain things. Um, so my kind of rule of thumb in that time was to agree to whatever came up if it felt like it aligned with my interests at that point. So I did a lot of kind of things for free and things like this, but also I felt like I learned a lot about my own professional practice and structuring that over that time.
So that's kind of, it sounds a bit like an informal apprenticeship, as in, or an internship where no money changing hands, but
Yeah.
there are some kinds of experiences that money can't buy.
Absolutely. That was very much my experience. And I think that was something that I kind of was informed by going to art college, but then I felt almost more informed by my experience of being a home educated person in the world. And through my teen years, and your sons were a huge part of a lot of these, I ran a lot of kind of events was my thing, you know? So we ran sort of long suffering mother. She's amazing. She let us do music summer camps at our house, and she let us do art workshops monthly that I ran and things like this. So there was a lot of things that had fed in that had very practical applications that I hadn't really considered of how they could inform being an adult and working in arts context or managing people in art context and things like this. So I did find that as a marriage between my formal education and my homeschooling, there was quite a lot there that did inform being an artist or working freelance and having this kind of own initiative that you needed to take, but also trusting in people to collaborate, and that excitement I think that is there about collaboration.
That's very cool. And so that's what you did for the first 2 years. So do you want to talk to us about getting your work where you work now?
Yes, so in the October of 2018 I began work as a art administrator. So up until that point I had been getting a bit more kind of illustrative work, and I got a bit of a dream for me. I illustrated a children's book, which is something I want to keep doing, and there was a lot of like really interesting things that kind of came my way and I was very excited to do, but I was recognizing in myself that I wanted some kind of structure, and I also wanted to have, maybe peers would be the wrong word, but more of a communicative experience, I think, which I did love the freedom of freelance work, and I found it very exciting that everything was quite different and each project had a different set of necessities, and there was everything you had to do, a lot of problem solving. I loved that, but I did feel a little isolated in it at times, and I do enjoy communal settings, and I think because of my upbringing and my experience with my siblings, but my friends, and we did things very communally. So I saw that there was a part-time role in Cork Community Art Link. So that's the oldest in Cork community arts organisation. So it's been running since '93, so a year before I was born, so it outdates me. So it runs in Blackpool here in Cork City, and it's a community participative art organisation. So its main focus will be working with any community group and volunteers, and everyone's very welcome, and it's a really, really inclusive ethos, which really aligns with what I enjoy about art as well. And the main thing is that through creating art we can bring people together and empower people to feel more positive in themselves and feel that they are part of a community. So just as soon as I kind of heard about it, it made me feel it just kind of triggered something in me that made me feel very connected to it right away. So I went in, and for me, it was definitely a thing that I recognized that I wanted that kind of structure as well.
Okay.
Which I think is informed through having all the time where I wasn't so structured, but I did want to have it, that there was kind of a kind of flow to it as a child and teenagers as well. We did have kind of things that brought us through the week in a way that I don't think I was going to recognize in there. So I went in there as an art administrator, which was something that I didn't have experience in before necessarily, but it initially was kind of answering phones and returning emails and things like this, but it kind of just kept blossoming, and it has been an absolutely incredible experience. So we have a very small structure where it's only 2 paid staff, and then other people are on community employment schemes, which I'm on as well, and I do 3 days a week in there. But through it, I've done external work in there, and so we have big projects that are kind of community street art and parades and festivals, and there's just been a wealth of information that has kind of informed my own practice through it as well. And the fact that we're able to work with community and do so much with vulnerable people, but also people who don't feel like they've experienced art before, it's just been really, really amazing. And I'm really happy to be in there, and it really lines up with, I think, what I wanted to do creatively, but I have that structure that's able to be my own practice as well. So it's really, it's a lovely balance at the moment. I'm really happy in the situation.
And you've worked here a year and a half now?
Yes, so I'll be coming up in October, will be my beginning of my second year, or my third year, which is mad now, it's added up. And then this year as well, I've had quite a lot, and at the end of last year, of my own kind of studio work. So there was some of the things that I'd kind of said yes to that weren't necessarily paid, came around in a really beautiful way, and I started kind of getting more commissions for illustration and some sort of fine art drawing and stuff as well. So it has been a really, really kind of trust in the universe here that started to kind of really show. I think it's yeah, exactly. But I do think that a huge amount of what I do now were skills I learned through home education, which I find really, really lovely to kind of look, and really impressive to my parents. Like, hats off, really great that they trusted in that, and that so many of the kind of life skills that would be potentially taken for granted have just really aided my experience as an adult and fitting into a workplace. And yes, yeah.
Absolutely. Hats off to your parents, because I think with everybody, family, with because you're the eldest in your home, and
Yes.
it doesn't really matter, in my experience, how many other families you have who are examples for you with older children who have followed their passion, found their dream, been self-motivated, and been able to move out of home as quite young adults, manage you know, all the bits and pieces about running a home and budgeting for themselves. So you could have families, I guess, with older kids who, you know, in your heart, well, it's working for them. When you're looking at your first child and your oldest child, you're going, yeah, but maybe it's because of something in their family structure that we don't have, or, you know, there's always, I think, a little voice in your head saying, you could really be messing this kid up now, you know.
I'm sure.
For myself, not for your parents, obviously, but it's just, yeah, it's the proof of the pudding, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I do completely credit my parents for being incredibly open-minded to my own interests as a child. And I think most Septembers, mum would kind of go, "Is this the one you want to go to school? You're welcome to do it if that's of interest to you." So it never felt like
so
inaccessible.
School attendance was offered frequently in your home.
It was, because I think maybe as well because I was the eldest that they were kind of winging it a bit, you know, so they were very much seeing what I felt comfortable with, you know. And
I guess back at the time, because you're kind of the age between my second and third boys, so we would have seen each other's families growing up and been friends from very small. And we did, in the cohort, there were a lot of kids who at 14 went into secondary school, and that seemed to be natural progression for some of the families. So I can remember at that stage myself, the little boys going, maybe that's the way to do it, or maybe it's not the way to do it, or, do you know, because that's that questioning, the September questioning, and the the sight of new uniforms and the smell of fresh books. Ah.
Yes, absolutely. And in my middle brother Lucas' case, actually, he did go to secondary school from first year and second year. He went in, mostly because I think me and my sister Maya kind of forced him in. We were like, "It'll be great for you. You'll love it." And he ended up thriving. He was fantastic, but I'm not sure how it did.
So I guess
Yeah.
as well that even within the one family, one size doesn't fit all. But not
Yes.
too many spoilers now, because I'm hoping that your lovely brother will gift me with
Absolutely. I'd love that.
Because
Yes.
he'd be an interesting subject. So yeah. Anyway, to wrap up, and thank you so much for the generosity of sharing your time with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So if you were thinking about something you could say to parents watching this now who've got two little ones who are 2 and 4, and they're wondering about school and whether to put their names down, or their names are already down, and they're thinking, do you know what, maybe we'll home educate for a year and see how it goes. Is there anything you could offer from your wonderful and varied experience that might reassure somebody?
I think the thing that I consider most is how much that following one passion, which may seem overwhelming, especially to a parent, if you see them only doing one thing, that can really be the thing that makes them happy for the rest of their life, you know? I think if mum had kind of gone, enough drawing now, do you want to do something else for a bit? Maybe I wouldn't have been here necessarily.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I feel like,
because all our children draw, and if you ask 5-year-olds, they will all tell you they can draw.
yes.
And I don't know if you've heard that story. I love it. That of a little boy who's drawing in class and says, the teacher says, "What was that?" Is looking for an explanation of the drawing, and he says, "Well, I'm drawing God," and the teacher says, "You can't do that. Nobody knows what God looks like." And the little boy says, "They'll know what God looks like when I'm finished my drawing." And
I've not heard that. It's fantastic.
If you ask 5-year-olds, everyone will say they can draw. I think John Holt says this in one of his books. If you go into a group of 5-year-olds, everyone will say, "Yes, I can draw, I can draw." If you go into a group of 10-year-olds, half of them will say, I can draw. If you go into 15-year-olds, 1 out of 20 might think they can draw.
That's so funny, Monica. My thesis was on this exact subject, which I think is class that it came up. Yeah. Absolutely. It's about that shift in pubescent where most people decide they can't draw, which is also kind of a tap closing of creativity in most people who aren't naturally good at it, which is, I think, a big bugbear for me, because everyone can create, in some way or the other, everyone can. And it's not about the end goal of it, which I think applies also to if you're home educating a child. If their experience is positive in the moment, that's wonderful. That'll see them through in a great way. And yeah, I think focusing on the child's specific needs, which I think is really attested to by the fact that all 5 of me, or my siblings, me included, have different experiences and different life paths, and we had the same general unschooling, and for us it's all resulted in very different things. So I think it's a scary leap for parents to make, and I really commend everyone who does, and I think you guys are all amazing for making that daily decision, which I'm sure must be wrought with so much unsurety, but it's incredible. And for me, it's been just wonderful, and I'm really grateful for my life experience.
Well, listen, thank you so much, Nadia. That's a great note to end on. And you are the living proof that one does not have to starve in a garret alone for one's art. And I particularly love your line drawings, particularly of kind of trees and rivers and stuff like that. I just find that, I know you do all kinds of art, but that's the stuff you do that I really love. But it's very personal. It's very personal what people respond to in an artist's work.
Absolutely.
But you're proof that you can earn your crust.
Oh, thank you very much. I try.
Listen, lovely to chat to you, and I look forward to catching you in real life when we
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thanks so much, Monica.